Welcome back to the Always Bayern Chelsea program for this relaxing evening edition. Friday, October 4th. Jim is sprawled out on the couch, and this will most likely be releasing Saturday, October 5th. But we have some midweek matches for both Bayern and Chelsea, European football, that we need to kind of run down and give you our reactions to.
Yeah, some great midweek football. As usual, these nighttime games, overseas of course, not here in the United States, are awesome. Love seeing the teams play at night. Tough loss for Bayern, good win for Chelsea, but more importantly, brutal week for me. Those of you that are in Milwaukee will know why. I won't even speak of it. But let's talk soccer because I want to get everything else off my mind.
Yeah, and what better way to do so? Champions League football is always important, and these first big tests for Vincent Kompany haven't necessarily gone how you'd hope. I don't think there's complete reason to panic yet as a fan, although I will say after the 1-0 loss to Aston Villa in the Champions League on Wednesday for Bayern Munich, I do think that Kompany got outcoached in that match, from the lineup to maybe some subs that happened and just most importantly overall tactics. Again, I'm not jumping out of the plane, pulling the parachute quite yet. I've loved what he's done for the most part with the squad, but I do think that these growing pains are to be expected, for such a young coach, especially jumping right into the Champions League. I caught some flack for saying that on my YouTube short, but I really appreciate the comments and kind of the discourse going back and forth with people. So let's kind of jump right in and talk about that match.
Yeah, definitely not time to hit the panic button. But I will say, if you're Kompany and Bayern, you can only go up from here. You're starting at maybe a low point in the Champions League, although you had the beautiful win against Dinamo Zagreb. But now you can only go up from here. You're going to face some tough competition. You'll have these tough games, but that's how you grind through things.
Yeah, and I think that Aston Villa is a very good squad. I don't underrate them at all. I think that they will finish top 4 in the Premier League, probably 4th. You can argue with how Chelsea's playing right now that they're gunning for that spot, but Unai Emery is a great coach, and the team is experienced. They're older, and they just had what it took to really beat Bayern in this match. They were very, very happy, similar to Leverkusen the last weekend, kind of sitting back in this compact low block and just being deadly off the counter, striking off the counter. And Bayern struggled to break down that block and get a lot of good opportunities. They dominated possession, again similar to Leverkusen, but they just weren't able to make the chances that they needed and finish the job when they needed to.
Yeah, to me, Aston Villa is not a flashy team. It doesn't seem like they score a ton of goals necessarily. At times they will, but they're a team that's been together for a while now, with their coach especially. They're probably going to have a few good years here where they're solid before some key guys get sold or things change, maybe a managerial change at some point if Emery goes on to greener pastures. I just think right now they're in a window where they're solid. They're not going to be world beaters. They're not going to win a Premier League. They're not going to win a Champions League. But they're solid, and if you catch them on a night where they're in their home stadium and feeling good about themselves, they might just beat you. And that's kind of what Bayern ran into, I think. I don't think Bayern necessarily was terrible. I just think that was kind of the scenario of how it happened on that particular night.
Yeah, and we should mention, too, a couple of things. One, this was Villa's first Champions League match in 40 years. I think it's 1982, I want to say, is when I saw. So the crowd was loud the whole entire time. The fans were truly amped up, as they should be. These Champions League nights are truly, truly unforgettable and just really special events. And honestly, they make me a nervous wreck. The text messages that I send you are just so dramatic back and forth. And the second thing there to mention is with this new Champions League format, the good teams are going to be playing each other more often. You have 8 matches now in this group stage. I think it's called league phase now. And so you're going to just be playing better competition, and a loss here doesn't necessarily mean the end of the world for you. However, Bayern has a damn tough stretch coming up. They just played Leverkusen in the Bundesliga, playing Villa now in the Champions League. Then they play Frankfurt this weekend, who's now the second place team in the Bundesliga. And then they play Stuttgart, and then they play Barca. So this stretch right here is extremely important for Bayern.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it is a tough stretch. And as I was saying early on, Bayern, this is the time where they can step up, work through some things, and come together as a squad. They certainly have the talent for it. They have the leadership, the captains, the guys that can get it done. Company, even as a early on head coach in his career, has so much experience as a player being able to manage these things. So I'm not too worried. I think they just need to step up and get things done. It also was an away match, as I mentioned. So if you're going to lose, that's the one to lose.
Yeah, so now that the stage has truly been set, I'm going to just go through Bayern's starting lineup because there was maybe a bit of a cause for concern if you look at Bayern's lineup. I certainly thought so and had messaged you before the match because of a few different things. So first of all, we had Neuer in between the sticks. We'll get to him a little bit later on as we talk about how the match progressed. Alphonso Davies at left back, which is what I had predicted. Kim and Upa is the center backs. It's clear that those are the two that Company is going to roll with. I hope that he doesn't run them into the ground like Tuchel did. But Eric Dyer has seen no playing time at all, which is a little bit unfortunate, I think. Because at some point, you're going to have to rotate him in there, and he's going to have some rust to shake off, quite frankly, when he gets his number called. At right back, you had Konrad Laimer. I was hoping and thinking that Rafa Guerreiro was going to start there at right back. Right back is hard right now because our two best right backs, Josef Stanisic and Sasha Bouet, are injured. So we don't really have a true right back. We have Laimer, who's a midfielder, and then we have Rafa Guerreiro, who's every position under the sun on the left-hand side, filling in to play right back at times. The midfield consisted of Pavlovic and Kimmich, which is what I expected. That's the combination that Company's been running with lately. And then Harry Kane at the top of the attack, as always, as predicted, but the three attackers behind Kane are where a few more questions come up. So Jamal Musiala sat this one out for the first half. Company wanted to give him a rest. And, it's come out now that he's battling some hip issues. So we'll see exactly what happens with that. At the time, I didn't like the decision to bench Musiala because he's the creative type of playmaker who you need to break down a low block, like Villa, we kind of knew was going to run with. However, if you're going to bench Musiala, rest him, that's fine. You're going to have to rest guys at some point. I didn't think this was necessarily the match to do it. But what I'm getting at is I wanted to see Thomas Muller in the 10. Michael Olise instead got the call at the 10 spot, which I think he's much better as a winger outside. I really strongly think that Muller should have got at least some minutes in this match. There's a lot of fans that think Muller should play every match. I'm not necessarily one of them, but I do think that there are certain teams that his style of play is perfect against, and this match, for example, is one of those, just because his off-ball movement and his creativity with the ball, and again, off-ball, really is how you break down a block like this. The individual talents of Coman, Olise, and Gnabry just didn't really do it. And yeah, that's what rounded out the attack, Gnabry and Coman. I didn't think Kingsley Coman should have got the start there. I would have rather seen Leroy Sané. I would have, honestly, I think, rather seen Tell there as well. So those are my kind of qualms with the starting lineup.
Yeah, it seems like early on, Company has no desire to play Muller for a full set of minutes, starting him from the beginning against a really solid team. Whether that's because he doesn't believe he can go 60 to 90 minutes, I'm not sure. He certainly has the capability of being a solid player for a set amount of time. I kind of lean towards him being that super sub, an older guy that can really gear it up for a solid 30 minutes. I don't know if that's the reason Company's doing it. That would be my guess. It's tough. You're used to Musiala coming in, being your spark guy in that number 10 spot. You put Elise there. I would expect Elise to do better in that spot. I just think he's a guy you make a big splash for in the transfer window. I know he's more of a right winger, but you got to expect guys to be able to move around a little bit and show some flexibility. Maybe he wasn't able to provide that. He can only get better, though, as time goes on.
I do agree with that. And I would have wanted Elise to start. I just think I would have wanted him on that wing and Muller in the 10, if I was drawing it up. But like you said, I would have at least liked to see Muller as that super sub this match, especially just because I think his creativity and his style of play was just perfect for this type of match. His experience as well, what he can do and create for other players. Because Bayern's attack just seemed flat, really, the whole match. They created some chances. And again, they were dominating possession, but they weren't making really good chances. A lot of their shots were weaker, maybe outside the box. In the first half, they had a couple of great chances. One of them was Gnabry, who just missed a wide-open Harry Kane for what would have been a goal. Gnabry took the shot himself and missed pretty bad. Overall, it was probably Gnabry's worst match. Just missed a couple different opportunities that he usually puts away. And quite frankly, I've never seen Kane lay into a player like he did when Gnabry missed him for that pass, because he was hands up yelling at him, and you could hear him through the broadcast yelling, and I don't think I've ever seen Kane that mad.
Yeah, that was definitely interesting. In that first half, both teams, I thought, just lacked the final touch, whether it was a pass, a good shot. I have multiple notes here where Gnabry maybe is passing, he should have been shooting, maybe shooting when he should have been passing. Both teams were slightly off. They would try a through ball, and it looked like there'd be space, but they had a terrible pass. Watkins created some problems for Upamecano, forced them to switch a little bit with Kim, but Aston Villa would be slightly off trying to get Watkins the ball. So they both just lacked that instinct that you need in the Champions League. Whether that was nerves, I think it probably was for both teams, but they both could have had some goals in that first half.
Yeah, they definitely both had their chances there, and I'd like to highlight and repeat what you said about Watkins causing Upamecano some trouble, because there were multiple times in that first half where you could just tell that Upamecano was in a little bit over his head. And that's not a knock on Upa's quality. It's maybe a knock on his positioning in this match. Now, first of all, Watkins is a great player. Ollie Watkins, an incredible player. So I'm not necessarily just harping on Upa. And the other part of this is his position in this company system is very high up and very aggressive. And a mistake can lead to a goal very quickly, or at least a great shot or a great attempt at goal. And like I said, you could just tell right away he was in a little bit over his head with Watkins. And we'll get to this later in the match with the goal that did happen, but it seemed like it was a little bit of a dam about to break situation. And you could see that they were just kind of adding a little bit more pressure here and there, and you could tell that eventually a mistake was going to lead to a goal. The dam was going to break. And that's usually the sort of calculated risk that seems to be fine in this system, because you're expecting Bayern's offense to score more goals. But credit to Villa, because their defense was just super solid this match, especially Martinez, the keeper, Argentinian. He was, obviously you could give man of the match to Duran for the goal, but Martinez, you could very well make a case that he was the man of the match as well.
Yeah, a couple points there. First, going back to the Upamecano situation, I thought it was crazy and interesting that Thierry Henry at half actually made the point that he thought Upa should have been sent off for his yellow on Watkins. Felt like it was, whether a goal-scoring opportunity or just the play, Now, he's saying that as a former striker himself, so that's probably why he said that. Other point I do have to make here. You mentioned Emi Martinez, brilliant game. He did in the first half have a little bit easier of a job because, I tell you what, I think I messaged you this, but Gnabry and Coman each injured some poor fans. I mean, they had a couple shots each where the ball just skied so far into the crowd, and you had to feel for those poor Aston Villa fans. I mean, people like to roast certain guys on Chelsea, the guy who's number 10, blonde, for some wayward shots. But I tell you what, in the first half, these guys, they just were nervous, I think.
I don't even know if it's that because, you're right with what you were saying. It was just a poor match. They were just off. It was Bayern's worst match of the season for sure. But you don't think that they would be nervous. I mean, Coman had the Champions League winning goal, and Gnabry, scores 5 goals against London teams every time he plays, in the Champions League. So maybe it's a little bit of the high expectations for Serge that even just going to England, people expect a lot out of him. But yeah, whatever it was, the attack on Bayern did not look good, and I thought Kane was okay overall. He definitely had some good shots that were just saved brilliantly, but he did fall into the trap that I don't like from him for a lot of the match, which was he was slinking back. He was slouching back. He wasn't in the box as much as I needed him to be.
I was going to ask about that because when you're not having Musiala in the game, I would expect that part of their plan, whether subconscious or not, would be for Kane to naturally drop deeper. We've talked about this so many times. I don't love it from Kane. I get he's a great passer at times and does great things, but that's probably going to be his reaction to do that without Musiala in there. Elise probably as well, subconsciously moving toward the right wing, even if he's supposed to be in more of the middle space. So that was an interesting dynamic for Kane there.
Well, so that's, in my opinion, part of the problem with starting Olise as the 10 instead of Muller, which is what I would have wanted, because I think that the Muller-Kane link-up from the 10 to Kane as the striker, as the 9, is more natural. It works better. It allows Kane to be farther up with Muller kind of like spearheading the press, whereas Olise, I just feel like works better with the space to create and kind of like link up with Kane horizontally rather than vertically, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I expected from Elise when they buy him, is him to be out on that right wing, delivering cross after cross into Kane. And he's good at dribbling as well, and he can do things in that central space. I mean, he's similar to Palmer in the sense that he can be in that right half space, as they call it, kind of between central and the right wing, and operate in there. But he's more of a true winger, I think, in terms of being able to cross the ball in and cut in off that right wing.
Yeah, and even, as you said, even Musiala kind of operates in that half space instead of, playing the style of 10 that like a Muller plays, for example. But, yeah, I think that all this is just kind of to say that the lineup decision was maybe a little bit overthought. That's to say, I hope he can learn from this, and I think that he will. He seems very calm and measured and thoughtful, and I think that this is all part of the process with a coach like him. But that really takes us into halftime, where we did see Musiala come on at the half because regardless of, I guess, whatever injuries he's working through, whether you think it's serious or not, I don't know, but he was there available for the match, and it was clear that we needed him, and company put him on at the half, and he instantly kind of started to make some chances in the start of the second half.
I actually didn't even realize he came on in the second half. I didn't catch the second half, unfortunately, but I assumed seeing the hip stuff later that he didn't. I do want to just make one point about company. I do think he's working through things for sure, trying to figure out his best tactics, his best lineups, how to sub guys, the right mesh of guys. I want to make it clear from my perspective. I realize I didn't watch the entire match as close, but in general, with a team as talented as Bayern and the guys I know they do have, I'm putting it slightly more on them to get things done. And I agree with your points about company and what he has to do. I just think when you have certain players, Kane especially, Elise, the talent he has, you got to be able to get stuff done. And bringing on Musiala in that second half, that was probably a bold choice with the hip too. Did he show signs of that at all in the second half?
No, and I didn't know that he was injured at all whatsoever before the match, after the match. I didn't know until yesterday that he was dealing with any sort of injury. So that's why I was a little bit more frustrated with the lineup originally during the match, directly after the match. Because to me at that point it seemed a little bit arrogant that, you think maybe we can just rest some guys for this match against Villa. Anyways, though, 65th minute, Sané comes on, and I was glad to see him. I actually predict him to start this weekend against Frankfurt. Hope he does. I don't know how much pain he's still in. He had that groin operation, dealing with that groin injury all of the second half of last season into the summer. I just want to see more of him. I want to see really what we have from him again, because he hasn't gotten enough time this year to be able to really showcase himself or shake off that rust, I don't think. He didn't really make an impact in this match. And then in the 75th minute, we saw João Palhinha come on, another guy who you kind of want to see more out of. He was all right, I thought. He made a couple of really nice tackles, but ultimately didn't move the needle.
Yeah, Palhinha, I mentioned this last pod. I've expected him to get more minutes, especially because I know Company wasn't the manager last year, but they almost bring him last year to the squad. They finally bring him over this time. Hasn't quite gotten the minutes that he probably thought he was going to get. I'd love to be a fly on the wall of the conversation he had with directors, Company, whoever, when he finally did sign, because it'd be interesting to know what he was promised, if you will. Certainly you got to fight for your spot and prove that you are the guy that they're signing and expecting to be. But still, at the same time, you are kind of promised a certain set of minutes to a degree. So I'm sure they're figuring that out, as I mentioned, the right mix. But he definitely is somebody to watch going forward.
Yeah, and I think it's just a little bit of a case of getting acclimated to a new country, a new language, a new system, a new team, all these different things. And also I think that Company, the directors, maybe everybody, didn't think that this Pavlovic-Kimmich midfield was going to be so good so quickly. But I wouldn't be shocked if Palhinha starts this weekend as well against Frankfurt. As we saw a little bit of a dip in performance from Pavlovic, I thought this last match, it's a long season, and these three are going to be the main three that play in the midfield, and I think we're going to start to see that rotation soon.
Yeah, I think Pavlovic could use a little bit of a rest.
Me too.
It almost seems like he's expected to do so much right now as such a young kid. He's got fresh legs, no doubt about it. He's young. He's rearing to go. He probably doesn't give a flying F, He just wants to be out there doing his thing, but sometimes that can maybe get to you a little bit when you don't realize it. So maybe that's happening right now if he had a little bit of an off game.
Yeah, I agree, and a lot of players I think on Bayern kind of had an off game, so we'll get to that at the end when we talk about some match awards. But in the 79th minute in this match, the dam finally broke. The goal scoring opportunity was converted. It happened, and it happened because of two mistakes. Really, it happened from a mistake of Upamecano's positioning again. And it also happened from a mistake by Neuer, who was way too far up, kind of caught in no man's land. And Jhon Duran, who's subbed in later in the match, super sub of the year so far probably, just hit a beautiful shot over Neuer's head. Like I said, he was in no man's land. He had no shot at getting back to it because of his position.
A combination of those couple things going wrong for Bayern, and a great strike by Duran, who, as you said, super sub of the year in Europe so far, I would say. I mean, he's been unreal for Aston Villa, even dating back to the tail end of last season. But, yeah, Neuer, you certainly can't be in that spot. As we talk about many times, that is his style. He plays up. You're expecting your defenders to be better, so I'll caveat my criticism with that. But at the same time, I think you just need to, toward the end of the game, probably be a little more conservative, especially when it's 0-0. But yeah, you expect your defenders to be better. Upamecano clearly wasn't. And then you do need a great strike by the opposition. Duran certainly provided that, and Neuer gets caught.
Yeah, I think you said that perfectly. Upamecano was out of position. With his pace, you can't get beat like that. But yeah, Neuer was just in no man's land, just too far up, and it's part of it's part of his game. It's the name of the game with him, really, is this calculated risk, because there were plenty of times during the match where his high position helps the team, where we got into some trouble and Upa or Kim could just kind of kick it back to him, and he was there easily to field it and start something new. Kimmich kind of said that after the game. They asked him about it. And if you're Bayern, you're really expecting to score more than one goal in a match like this, so it's not like it's Neuer's fault that Bayern lost the match, but it was certainly a mistake on him.
Yeah, look, if it was that dumb of a strategy and tactic to play up like that, and if it was that easy to score off of, teams would do it all the time. Clearly that doesn't happen. As I mentioned, you do need a great strike by Duran. You need a great ball by whoever that was that passed it to Duran. I mean, that was a beautiful ball. It was from kind of far out, if I recall. So you need those things to go right for it to happen. So you can't blame Neuer too much.
Yeah, so it's 1-0 at that point. The stadium's rocking. Everybody's just losing their shit. Bayern make a few more subs at the end of the match, but it doesn't matter. Tell comes in. Goretzka comes in. I believe that was it. They came in the 85th minute. It didn't matter. Bayern wasn't able to put anything through. So should we go ahead and list a couple of match awards for this one now?
Yeah, I'm going to let you run with this one. I don't feel confident enough in just watching the first half to list any real awards.
Yeah, so for this one, I think I might have to do match awards a little bit differently, because the way I saw it, there were a couple of players, really 2 players on Bayern that played really good, 2 players that played pretty good, and then everybody else, honestly, was kind of meh to me. So let's go with I'll give the man of the match award, the Batman award, to one of the players who I thought did really good, and then the Robin award to the other player who did really good. So Batman award goes to Joshua Kimmich. I thought he was Bayern's best player throughout the whole match. Just did what we talk about him doing this whole season so far, dominating the game in the midfield. I thought Bayern's midfield was the best part of their game, and that was mostly because of Kimmich, because I thought Pavlovic was so-so.
Yeah, Kimmich, I know, looked solid in that first half. I will just add, if I were to call out one player in the first half, I thought Davies looked better than normal. I think I even texted you that. That's just my 2 cents there.
Well, I think you're dead on, because my Robin is Alphonso Davies. And, like I said, Kimmich and Davies were the 2 players on Bayern that I thought looked really good. Davies had one of his most mature performances I've ever seen from him. He was in the right places when he needed to be. He wasn't necessarily just bombing shots, because he has the ability to strike hard and run fast, but he was just, positionally very, very good. And he was good at getting back and playing defense as well, which he isn't always good at. I think sometimes what I saw from him last year was he would just rely on his pace, his incredible pace, to try to get back and play defense, and against the good teams that wouldn't work and they would just punish him. But it seems like now he's not doing that. He's being where he should be when he needs to be there. And yeah, I thought he had a great game.
When you're a fast athletic player, it's all about knowing how and when to use your pace. He did a better job of that against Aston Villa for sure. So good on him.
And then the underrated, I'll just give my 2 players who I thought were pretty good. Kane, we already talked about, and then the other one was Mykhaylo when he came on in that second half, made some chances for the team. ultimately, neither of them were really good enough to, I guess, get on the score sheet and make a big difference in the match. But I thought that they were both solid.
Good to hear for them. I do want to sneak in a quick award here. I don't bring this one out often. I used it in the past. Bad day at the office. I want to get your reaction on this guy. We've hardly talked about him. But I thought there was one player that looked out of place, overmatched, not ready for a Champions League match. Konrad Laimer.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I thought Laimer, Upa, Coman, and Serge had particularly poor games, I would say. And I think that Laimer, is just not naturally a right back. Bayern's whole back line, really, except for Davies, just didn't look that strong. I think it was particularly noticeable with Laimer, like you said. And I thought Kim had a better game than Upa. If we're gonna talk about Kim, I thought he was a little bit better positionally.
I would agree, especially when they had to change after that yellow. I did think they both were able to cover well considering making that change. It's something that's not easy to do, so credit to them at least for being able to somewhat do that.
Yeah, and like you said about Laimer, it's just tough for him because he's not the type of player who is set up and built to play a right back in Kompany's system. But yeah, it definitely showed.
He's just a small guy, and I messaged you this. He's a really great Bundesliga player, a great squad guy. I think he's a talented player. I mean, he plays well for his country, and they're no slouch as a team and as a nation in the Euro leagues. So he just needs his right position, I think, with good guys around him.
Yeah, that's really all I had for match awards, because you could give the defender to Davies, I guess, and we already talked about him. But yeah, totally agree on Laimer. I actually think he might be one of those guys who will be looking for a move, most likely next summer. I don't see him leaving in January, but that's always a possibility.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with him. I think he's always a guy that you could need, though, is my point in general. I'm not trying to crap on him because I think you need guys like him in your squad.
Next up for Bayern Munich, we got Frankfurt. Like I said, the second-place team currently in the Bundesliga, and they are absolutely no slouch. I think they're definitely one of the most underrated teams in the Bundesliga, maybe in Europe, but we're going to have to see how the rest of their season plays out. I watched their first match of the year against Dortmund, which was their only loss of the year. They actually won the rest of their Bundesliga matches. No draws in there either. And they were clearly a little bit just off in that first match. They were close to Dortmund for most of the match, and then at the end, kind of Dortmund pulled away and put 2 goals into the net. But Omar Malmouche, I don't know if that's how you say his name exactly, but he just is a stud, and I want to say he has 9 goal contributions already this year, actually maybe 11. Hey, check out our preview when we post that on Twitter, because it's some, I think he has 9 goals and then, a number of assists, so he's really making a name for himself.
Are they playing any European football?
Yeah, they're in the Europa League, I believe.
Beautiful.
Yeah. They finished 6th last year in the Bundesliga, and Germany got a ton of spots in Europe because they just had a really strong performance as a league last year.
Yeah, I think they have, 5 in the Champions League?
Yep. Yeah, so that match will be on Sunday at 10:30 a.m. We'll have all the coverage you need, so obviously check us out. But I don't want to just make this the Bayern show, so we should probably talk about Chelsea Football Club because they played a wonderful match this week as well.
Wonderful, exciting, fantastic, electric at times. Atmosphere seemed great at the Bridge. Been some questions about whether it's a good atmosphere this season with the fans. Arguably, the away fans have been better. A lot of times that is the case because if you're willing to travel, you're going to be a great, passionate fan. Nonetheless, great to have European football nights at the Bridge back this season. Chelsea in the Europa Conference League, their first match day, round, phase, whatever you were calling it, first out of 6, home against Gent, who currently is leading the Belgian Pro League. Don't know if they have a certain name for that league, but Gent, beautiful city in the beautiful nation of Belgium. As we've talked about, I was there, so I can say that. And Gent, they're not a slouch of a squad. As I mentioned, they're leading their league, but they came to play. Chelsea puts out this fantastic B squad, as they've been calling it, but it's really not a normal B squad because they have some absolute star players on that B squad.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Chelsea, this is the perfect scenario. You play this B squad in the Conference League that realistically you should be able to win, just looking at the competition. And so you get a good amount of rest for your studs, your absolute stars in these opening matches of this Conference League, and ideally keep your stars fresh for the Premier League, which is the big fish at this point, and also get these guys who otherwise wouldn't get a lot of minutes, valuable experience in matches that matter, and just valuable playing time, and also the ability to build chemistry together and the ability to build chemistry on the pitch.
And they're not just resting stars; they're resting an entire starting 11.
Yeah, I was gonna say so far it's been 10 or 11 guys, right? Every single Conference League match.
In this case, it was an 11 changed players from their last Premier League match against Brighton. So you had Philip Jorgensen in goal from left to right. You had Veiga, Benoit Badiashile, Tosin, Disasi. Then you had Cesare Cassidy, KDH, Felix, Nkunku up top, Mudryk on the left wing, Neto on the right wing. I think that's everybody. Feel like I'm maybe missing another player in there, a midfielder or something. But nonetheless, it's amazing that they can make all those changes and still field an exciting, amazing squad. What's great about it is, as you mentioned, these guys are getting chemistry. You can see it. You can see when Felix and Nkunku are interchanging the ball, they're building chemistry, and they're only going to get better. Nkunku's a guy that arguably could be starting in the Prem, has 7 goals now this year. Only one of them's in the Premier League. That's insane at this point.
It's a lot of balloons.
Yeah, and he can't quite break in because Jackson's playing well too. That's the crazy thing, and we'll get to it maybe toward the end as we preview against Forest, but all these guys are starting to hum. They're starting to feel good. And when you're challenging each other in games and in practice, that makes everybody better.
Yeah, that's what you really want. You want a sort of healthy competition that's going to push everybody forward.
Healthy competition is always good. One of the key parts of squad building for these teams, especially with potential for 70 to 80 games when you consider the FIFA Club World Cup. So let's talk about the first half. I watched this one closely before the Brewer game on Thursday.
The Brewer game? I thought we weren't going to talk about that.
It slipped in my mind. I was kind of feeling positive. It just happened to slip out of my mouth, but now I'm depressed again. No, but this first half was solid overall. Chelsea kind of started dominating a little bit. These games with this B squad, the first 5 minutes I almost toss out. It seems like they need 5 minutes to start getting going and getting the passes flowing, but I think Chelsea did some nice things in that first half. Mudryk was great on the left wing. I think Neto started off great on the right wing. As I mentioned, Felix and Nkunku, you can see they're building chemistry. I saw somebody on Twitter said they just need a little bit more time to cook in the air fryer because once they do, they'll be so electric together.
Yeah, I agree. I thought Neto looked particularly strong, like you said. Mudryk looked nice, especially off ball. With Mudryk, it's going to be about what we talked about with Davies, learning to control his pace, learning to kind of get those finishing touches. Felix looked good, of course, and Nkunku looked great to start off there.
And in this first half, guys are playing well. They're threatening. Gent aren't really doing much. Suddenly we have some sort of interchange because there might have been a set piece or something, but Misha ends up kind of on the right wing, brings the ball toward the end line, and suddenly floats a beautiful little cross that leads directly to, yes, my moment of the match, a Renato Veiga first Chelsea goal. Couldn't happen to a more brilliant guy, a guy that has embodied being a Chelsea player so far this season, and he puts a beautiful header into the far corner past the keeper.
Definitely the moment of the match. That was a great assist from Mudryk, I gotta say. It was perfectly placed, and I'm super happy for Veiga for the reasons you mentioned. Just overall, the entire match, I thought he was rock solid, damn good, great.
And that was a great way to start it off because you have Mudryk then feeling positive about himself, confident. You get everybody fired up because Veiga is an awesome guy that gets the team going. I watched it back. Beautiful slide as a celebration. Then lets his guy upstairs know that he appreciates him after the goal as well. But great way to start the match. And the rest of the first half, last 20, wasn't amazing. Thought Chelsea kind of fell off a little bit. But second half, you watched it live. I caught it back last night after that other event that we were both at. Really opened up. I think you mentioned that quite a bit to me through some messages. Chelsea fortunately get on the board within a few minutes after a beautiful ball by none other than Axel Disasi over the top, a la Enzo Fernandez, to Pedro Neto, who tucks it away a la Noni Madueke against Servette.
Yeah, there was actually another moment in the match where Disasi could have / should have scored a goal, so he was really contributing to this attack. As in just playing really far up the pitch and getting balls and being in the danger zone, so to speak. But yeah, shout out to Neto because that was a nice goal and just a really solid performance from him as well. The whole entire match, I thought.
You mentioned that Disasi almost goal. Neto with a brilliant cross actually should have been scored by Benoit first, who couldn't get a leg on it, and then by Disasi, who couldn't get kind of a chest or a hip on it.
Yeah, any part of his body, really, and it probably would have went in.
It was amazing that didn't go in, but as I mentioned, this game opened up. Interesting goal for Gent to bring it to 2-1, where it was the latter half of a set piece. Chelsea kind of end up overloading one side of where they were defending, so 5 Gent players were just basically wide open. One of them heads it in, and then Chelsea bag a couple goals toward the rest of the match, basically 2 identical goals where they have some good play. The ball either gets knocked around a little bit, or in the first one's case, Renato Veiga, after a set piece, kind of brings it into the middle of the box. Cristo then gets on it, puts it away. The fourth being a beautiful ball from Felix to Cristo. Kind of gets tied up a little bit by the defender, and there's Dewsbury-Hall to put it away for that fourth goal.
Yeah, I'll just pretty much echo those sentiments for the second half. The Gent goal in the 50th minute was just poor defending, kind of like you mentioned, poor positioning. It was a solid block of blue and then a solid block of disgusting neon yellow, which if you know anything about me, I just really don't like neon colors. Those are all neon yellow, neon orange, neon pink. My least favorite color is neon green. It hurts my eyes to look at. I don't think stuff should be that color. It just lacks class. It's so abrasive. But yeah, that was just a lapse, I think, on the Chelsea defense, in the whole set piece right there. But if you want to give a second moment of the match, I think you probably give it to Nkunku's goal in the 63rd minute because just great assist by Veiga, opening up that 2-goal lead again. At that point, you could kind of feel that they weren't going to look back. And actually, when I saw it live, I thought it was a really, really incredible goal by Nkunku. For some reason, the way he ran up at it, I was out of my seat. But watching it back, maybe I brought myself down to earth a little bit. The keeper probably could have, maybe should have saved it. But nonetheless, good assist and good goal. And then, after that, the Dewsbury-Hall goal, you just knew Chelsea had it. The bridge was rocking. And you give Gent a pity goal there at the very end.
Yeah, I'm certainly not upset about giving away 2 goals. We score 4 once again. Unreal run of goals that we've been on here. The second they had was so late in the match. Really an open play. Great play by them. No shame in that at all. Was it poor defending? Maybe, but also just a good play on them with the counterattack. The two efforts by the keeper on those two goals late in the second half for Chelsea, I wouldn't even necessarily call it poor keeping. It's just almost poor guessing. On Nkunku's, he just dove left. Whether he saw it coming off of Christo or not, I'm not sure, but the goal ended up kind of going more to his right, so it was weird that he dove left. I'm not sure whether it was a guess because he assumed it was going that way. Whatever the case is, that's kind of what happened there. Almost similar with Dewsbury-Hall's because it wasn't hit that hard at him, and he was kind of diving on the ground and then deflects off him. Whether that's poor effort, maybe just him being a Belgian Pro League keeper, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think if anything, he maybe dove a little bit too early. I'm no expert at goalkeeping by any means. I'm not even an expert in soccer, and yet here I am talking about it. That was maybe my analysis, is if he would have waited a little bit, he could have probably made the save, but who knows?
Yeah, and like I said, this match, you really are just taking the points, taking the vibes. Great vibes with this match. The crowd's loving it. Everything I've seen online has been largely positive. Even guys like Mudryk putting in good performances. So not much analysis that I really have to go over here because I was watching it on those pure vibes. I wasn't watching it with the intent to look at all these tactical things Maresca was doing. I'm just happy that the boys are loving playing together. They're clearly happy in training, at the game. They're finding each other with brilliant passing. Veiga's making awesome through balls. I mean, what a bargain this guy has become. Tosin's looking strong at the back. Benoit continues to fall off and be trash, but we won't talk about that. Disasi's looking all right. Jorgensen, 2 goals, but really not much he could do about them. Wasn't making any terrible moves with the ball at his feet, which is always what you want to look for between him and Sanchez. So, like I said, it's just a vibes match, and Chelsea succeeded in those vibes.
Totally agree. Do you have any awards to give out for this one, or is it just strict vibes?
Vibes for Veiga.
Yeah, Veiga would be the Batman, I think. I thought he was the best player. I had Neto as the Robin, and then I had Tosin as underrated. I didn't give out a defender because I thought they were all pretty good.
You must have looked at my sheet because that's exactly what I have. Tosin technically listed as best defender, but nonetheless, those are the 3 that I wanted to point out for sure. Ended up giving Veiga the fireball because watching this guy, how can you not be happy and put a smile on your face? He's awesome.
I mean, whether he's playing good or bad, you could give him the fireball just based off vibes.
I do want to point something out I thought was funny. His goal, I think he wanted to jump back into the crowd, and then it almost looked like Felix pulled him back a little bit because he probably would have gotten another yellow for it. So I just had to mention that because I think every time Veiga's on the pitch, he just wants to crowd surf.
I wish we could be at the bridge for a crowd surfing moment.
It would be so electric. And speaking of the bridge, Chelsea will be back this weekend, Sunday, 8 a.m. Central Time, playing Nottingham Forest. I don't think they're still unbeaten. They were unbeaten through 5 matches, I think. They're sitting 10th in the table, so a lot of those have been draws. But they've given up as well, I believe, the second least amount of goals behind City, I want to say. I think they've scored 6, given up 5. Could be an interesting match. I don't know whether they go low block or not, but Chelsea probably going to make a lot of changes back to their Premier League lineup. I think the only 3 spots in question right now would be Nkunku replacing maybe Jackson or somebody. Neto could replace Noni. I think it's just 2 because that's kind of the best. Veiga would be that 3rd, but Cucurella's been playing so well that you're not going to put Veiga in for him.
Forest lost to Fulham.
You're right, and I called that because one of my good friends picked Forest in our pool, and I told him, hey, watch out for Fulham.
Regardless, I think that it's going to be a good match, a fun match to watch. The last match before the international break, I feel like holds a little bit extra importance. Maybe that's just me emotionally, thinking about it. But especially with Bayern Munich, I've seen a lot of fans calling this a must-win for them. I don't necessarily agree with that so early in the season. But if they were to lose it and go into the international break, I think there would start to be some questions. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to the matches this weekend.
Definitely would be great to get a couple wins on Sunday. Going into the international break depresses me even thinking about the fact that we won't have football unless you watch some of those international games. But nonetheless, going to be a great weekend.
Yeah, I think that's all we got to talk about. So unless you have any other words to speak, I will say Mia San Mia.
Up the Chelsea.